Welcome to our podcast From the Ground Up, where we interview startup founders exploring their journeys, their successes, challenges, and lessons learned. We hope you be inspired in discovering what it takes to build a thriving startup. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, and here with us today we have Ryan McManus, the founder and CEO of Share Mobility, a Series A startup that's raised $19 million in funding. It's a fascinating story. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jake. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's going great on a Friday. Thanks for joining here, and excited to talk about not just your company, but also a little bit about your story. I think it's got a unique story because we've never had a guest that's been funded on a pre-idea, but then taken that idea, figured out a solution to a problem that existed, and then moved it forward. And we'll talk about how that happened. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about where you're from and what's the industry that got you started prior to joining and building your own startup?
Great question, Jake. So I'm based in Columbus, Ohio. I've been running Share Mobility now for a little over 7 years, been an entrepreneur for a decade. Got my start in the mailing industry. I worked for a Swiss company that made some of the fastest mailing machines in the world. Had a great opportunity to start my career there, had an incredible mentor. And that's where I learned about glide path businesses and saw kind of the transition of the mailing industry from physical paper to digital, and really just kind of saw that as a model for industries. As new innovation and new companies come out, incumbents either evolve or die. And then I was running a marketing agency where I worked with other entrepreneurs, and that put me in the right room to look at the automotive industry. And I saw a lot of similarities in the automotive industry to the mailing industry. And the founding thesis of Share Mobility, or the company that became Share Mobility, was we're going to develop technology for a world where everyone was a passenger. And that was a really big idea that got us accepted into the Jaguar Land Rover Tech Incubator in Portland. And so we started a company to go into the incubator, and we spent about a year just swimming a blue ocean looking for what is a big opportunity in the automotive industry, where we could win in Columbus, Ohio, but also make an impact. So behind you, it says talent pool. And when we first got started, we were thinking about the talent pool being really broad and all types of workers. And we started moving people to corporate. And that was kind of the beginnings of the business. But now we serve what is the largest part of the talent pool, which is hourly workers. And we were trying to make transportation a employee benefit that serves hourly workers.
It's fascinating because where you started and where you're at today, I know there was some changes that happened from what you shared earlier. What was your thesis before you built what you have today? The pandemic hit different companies in different ways. What was the impact for your company prior to the pandemic 7 years ago and where you're at today?
Yeah. So Share Mobility was always about being a B2B mobility business to bring transportation to people that needed it. We initially worked more with corporate headquarters, and they had budgets to move their salaried workers, but they didn't have budgets and really weren't thinking about their hourly workers. And if you remember what the labor market was like pre-COVID, the employers had a lot more power over the hourly worker. And it was during COVID that power shift very much changed. And the employees had a lot more mobility between jobs if transportation was available.
Yep, got it. So when you started the company initially and the model that you had then, has it changed much, or is it really that's the vision has been there and you've kind of navigated as you've gone to build what you've created? Or was it different in any capacity? When we talk to entrepreneurs, there's always, micro pivots and some major pivots. It's not always a straight line. For you, what's been some of the opportunities you've seen that you've navigated around and towards?
Yeah, so I think externally it might look like a lot of pivots, but I kind of saw it as a trajectory of the business that was going to change and evolve as we proved certain things out. And so in the beginning, we actually operated the transportation service. We owned vehicles, we had W-2 drivers, we were providing the transportation service. And we thought that was going to be a part of the business long term because the operator market didn't understand what we were trying to do. But after we got 2 or 3 years of operating data, we had proved it enough that we could then go work with operators. And so an opportunity that wasn't presented to us early on in the business came about later. And so because we decided to go build this new mode of transportation and build the software to do it and proved it as an operator, we had enough data to go to very well-established transportation operators and say, you should be our partner on this. And we're big enough and established enough for you to take us seriously. That allowed us to go from being a service-intensive business to more of a technology business because we did that transportation service. And so, yeah, it was a pivot from having vehicles and drivers to not having vehicles and drivers. But the intention was never to have this giant transportation services business. It was to prove that there was a B2B model for scheduling rides to work and getting employees to schedule their commute, combine all of that together and put it into a 14-passenger van in a really, really efficient route. We had to build all of that out. And then the second biggest pivot was going from serving kind of a broad B2B segment of any organization that needed transportation, that included seniors and healthcare. And then kind of during COVID saying, all right, what are we going to be the best at? What are we really, really going to focus at? And it wasn't just any job. It was rural-based jobs. We're going to be the best at getting people to rural-based jobs because that's what the world needs.
You know, I'm from Silicon Valley, and we see big tech companies all the time spinning up these services where, you know, that's part of the benefit of working for a company where you don't need to spend 2 hours driving back and forth to a company where, you know, they send a van out to a group of employees, or, you know, in some scenarios, it might be a car. It could be a train you jump on to get from point A to point B. I know there's a need there, but across the US, we're not all in cities. So the idea about providing this sort of shared mobility concept is very easy to understand from my perspective. If you're living anywhere else in the world in, you know, smaller communities, what's been the buy-in to this solution that you're building?
Yeah. So you bring up the Google bus. I'm trying to bring the Google bus to Lincoln, Nebraska, and kind of take the same thing they've been doing for a decade, where if you go to Facebook, you expect them to provide you a job. If you're working in Palo Alto, then you can live in San Francisco, or expect them to give you a ride to the job so that you can live in San Francisco and get out to Palo Alto. But for 90% of companies in the United States, they offer no help with commuting at all. So we're coming from a point of zero where the employers don't have a budget, they don't have an existing program, they don't even totally understand the problem facing their workforce. And we've got to bring them up to a level of understanding where they not only get it, but they get it and they're going to allocate budget against it.
So you're not only selling a service or a product, you're also educating the buyer on what the benefit could be for what you're providing. At the end of the day, who gets the most benefit from your service? Is it the employee that's on a bus or not having to worry about traffic? Is it the company that's retaining the employees because they have a different presentation of the total comp package? Is it HR that, you know, has happy employees running around saying, I'm not burnt out anymore? What's net it all out for us here?
So we're specifically going to HR departments and saying we can help solve your problems by improving retention and eliminating that turnover cost and improving the retention rate of your workforce is the pain point that we're coming in and trying to solve. And so for organizations dealing with hard to fill jobs or really high attrition rate of their workforce, offering transportation is something that's proven to improve retention by 300%. Even though the companies today, the expenses are kind of broken up in a variety of different areas, but it's very, very clear to see how much the employees are spending on commuting. And that's the specific expense we're able to target.
I love that. I don't think it's looked at that way for most traditional companies. Commute is, you know, part of the deal. Here's where we're at, and you have to find a way how to get here. But an additional benefit of helping them get there and get home, I think is really groundbreaking in a lot of ways. What's the cost? Like if I'm a company and I have, 500 employees and maybe 20% are commuting pretty long range, what am I really looking at if I was to utilize a service like yours or maybe some other service?
Yeah. So first, we help companies really understand how much they're already spending through the employee commute. And so it might vary a little bit nationally, but a 45-minute commute is going to cost you about $7,500 a year. And a 1-hour commute's a little over 10 grand. So you can start to look at how far are people traveling, how much are they spending to get to work. And for a company that's using our service, it might be a few $100 per month per person, but it's typically half or less than the cost of driving.
Wow. So the numbers make sense. What's been the response when you present this to HR, knowing that it might be the first time they've ever heard of something like this? And what's been their sort of buy-in to it once you kind of walk through the numbers?
Yeah, I think it's very positive. They really understand the problem. And it comes down to helping them go communicate to the executives that they should allocate. HR departments often don't have the discretionary funds to be able to do this. But if they can help us take it to a plant manager, we can help that plant manager understand that having 20% of their jobs unfilled impacts their production X amount per hour in dollars. And by being able to fill and retain those jobs, we're going to help them capture that production revenue. So we're seeing somewhere between like $8 and $16 in return for every dollar spent on transportation.
Wow. Now you're a technology company and you've built a platform. So when you go into an HR department or a company, what are they really getting from you?
So we do this analysis with them where they connect their HR data into our commuter analysis. And for the first time, HR departments are visualizing where their employees live. They're able to see what areas have similar looking employees based on income and other demographics. And then we're able to tell them, based on where the employees live, who could ride public transit. We often see this being a very low rate of potential utilization of a workforce, especially if that workforce is crossing a county line. And we tell them how much the employees are spending in dollars and CO2 getting to work. And so with all of that data, that's what we're using with the HR department to go and communicate that to executives. And so this tool that we're building for HR departments helps them get over one of the big barriers to helping the employees, which is the fact that they can't know if someone owns a car, right? And you know, the Department of Education is passing out gift cards for gas to people that don't have cars. And the reason is that the employers aren't allowed to know whether or not somebody has a car. It's financial information. And the way that HR departments have been advised is to put, do you have reliable transportation on the job application? That's why you see it on every single job application. It's become the legally acceptable way to ask if somebody has a car. And everybody says yes. But because of that, there's a high or a low show rate of new hires on their first day. And then transportation can be a major cause of turnover. And so through all of this data, we can help the HR department intelligently recommend options for their workforce. They don't have to get into knowing whether or not somebody has a car. We can pretty much tell based on demographics whether they're likely to or not. And that tells us a lot about how we can improve somebody's outcomes with transportation.
Really cool. Yeah, groundbreaking. You have companies in technology, like I mentioned earlier in Silicon Valley, where many of the employees, hundreds, thousands, are driving around in Teslas and driving around in Maseratis, and they're doing pretty well. Sometimes you want to be in a car at your kind of private time, back and forth. But you talked about hourly workers. You talked about a different type of industry potentially that maybe not everyone has a Tesla and maybe they don't even have a car. So what type of industries, what type of companies do you see the most benefit for this type of service and product?
Well, we're having a lot of success in manufacturing, kind of all industries. Factory farming and food production is another one where we're having a lot of success. And then logistics. These are the types of facilities that they're putting in rural tax-abated areas where the employees are coming from urban areas. They're crossing a county line where there's no bus, and they're ending up having to spend a lot of their money to getting to work. Another issue facing those employers is they're getting a lot of new neighbors. Our country is doing some amazing things around reshoring of manufacturing to bring more manufacturing to the U.S. You can just look at Ohio to see some of the amazing things being done by economic development to attract jobs and companies. But this can create a problem for your neighbor who's been there for 10 years, who is just trying to fill the jobs they have open. And now some big manufacturer came in and created 4,000 jobs right next door. And so with economic growth puts challenges on the existing employers. And transportation is one of the ways that those existing employers are going to be able to compete with the new employers who often can pay more in the wage. But if the employer can help show the employees that they're keeping more of what they earn, then they can help retain them and likely win new employees.
That's great. There is this debate about technology that the more advanced it gets, the more it automates the jobs we have. And in some cases, takes away those jobs. And in other cases, the argument is it actually improves the efficiency of the worker and might maybe even creates jobs. What's your take on that?
Did you read Mark Andreessen's letter recently about this topic?
I have not, no.
It's worth reading. It was published in the last couple of weeks. And he basically hypothesized that while everybody thought technology eliminates jobs, it's proven to create 2 for every one that it might eliminate. And I see that in the growth of e-commerce related fulfillment jobs. As more and more of our buying is done online, costs of things are coming down. What's the result? We're buying a lot more. And that's creating a new job in that distribution center and potentially also to make those goods here. So I firmly believe that technology is going to create way more jobs that it's going to eliminate. But there's also a big part of the workforce where the technology is never going to be able to eliminate those jobs. Unfortunately, while those jobs are very necessary, they're the ones earning the least. And if we want to achieve our economic potential, we've got to do something to uplift those workers who are in some ways being priced out of life. You can just compare 2 charts. Compare the growth of wages to the growth of transportation costs. And the transportation costs are growing far faster than and the employer has an opportunity to combine the buying power of their workforce to address this commuting problem. I think about it like healthcare. If tomorrow all the employers said, go figure out your healthcare, there'd be all sorts of costs and time associated with that. Well, we're trying to create that level of efficiency into transportation and leverage the trust that employer has to bring a new option to the employee, and then be able to combine all of their workers to intelligently give them a much, much better, much more efficient, more sustainable transportation option. Today, I'm not going to get you to do this. I'm not going to get you to give up a car for this, and I really don't care. I want to go help the hourly worker that doesn't have one, can't afford one, and won't be able to. And they'll be able to maybe eventually get to a point where they can't afford their own car. But there's a generation coming that is not choosing to own a car. And that's part of the business that we're building for, that future where somebody's going to show up to work and hopefully say, do you offer share mobility? Can you get me to work?
You know, there's a big opportunity in the US. If you look globally, there might be lots of opportunities there too. Underserved countries that don't have the economics that we do. You know, if you go into South America or, parts of Mexico, parts of Europe, you look around, there's not a lot of cars in some countries. It's more about getting on a bus, getting on a horse, walking, maybe getting in a taxi, getting in some shared train experience. Where do you see your company in terms of the technology and the platform outside the US going?
Yeah. Well, I try not to spend too much time because the U.S. just has so much opportunity and need that we're going to be really focused on the U.S. But, places like Brazil already mandate that employers provide some type of transportation. Different parts of the world, it's actually quite common for the employers to provide some type of van service for the employees. And as you think about decades from now, mega cities around the world where they're going to have 50, 70 million people living together, how are you going to possibly have commuting of 50 million people? Well, you're going to have it coordinated, and you're going to have to optimize through some connection point, and it's likely through the employers. And so I think we're building a model that's going to work in the US. It's going to go from being something used by companies for hourly workers to a more broader worker segment. And then we're going to find different markets in the world that are going to be able to take that technology. And hopefully we can kind of do a top down where we're working with both government and private industry to implement this and to bring it to the people almost as a utility where a government is saying scheduled share mobility is the utility that we're going to use for commuter management.
I like that a lot. We a lot of companies we work with, we work with startups out of Silicon Valley and different parts of the US, all the big tech hubs. And, they're hiring people internationally. Since COVID, you can hire remotely. It first began in different parts of the US, and then it went to Canada and Mexico and South America and Eastern Europe and Asia. But we do hear about vouchers that are part of a compensation package in Brazil, for example. The employees get a lot of benefits. They get food vouchers, they get transportation vouchers, they get all these benefits that they may or may not take advantage of, but it's already baked into their systems. So I think that you're really thinking about solving a big problem here in the US, and I love how you're approaching it. As a company, what's been one of the opportunities or maybe the challenges of scaling the company as you've been in the business now 7 years, where you're at today, and kind of taking that next step as a company?
Yeah, I think we've learned through this business to continuously be obsessed with the problem that we're trying to solve, and to put our efforts into building a product that really perfectly solves the problem of our ideal customer, and trying to be as narrow as possible with that before you start looking at other things that you might want to go out and tackle. For us, lots of groups bring transportation problems to us, and a lot of things can look like an opportunity. And we can't solve every transportation problem. We can't solve every commuting problem today. And so we have to be really disciplined about what part of the market we want to be good at, and what other part of the market we want to say we're not going to be good at. And I think we've got the business to the point now where we really know who we want to be serving. And now we're just trying to educate more of the market that looks exactly like the customer we know that we do an awesome job of delivering for.
That's great. Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, says that, as a founder of a company, you have 100 fires burning every day and you can only put out so many, but you focus on the ones that matter most. For you, what are the fires that you work to put out, and what keeps you up at night thinking about as you continue on this journey of building your company?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of fires. I've got a really great leadership team in place to where the fires don't seem to be continuously burning. And so I almost don't feel that as a founder, where every day I've got new fires and I'm trying to decide each day on what I'm putting out. I don't really feel like that fits. I think that it's about supporting the new priorities that your team members have as the business evolves, and being available and ready to go eliminate roadblocks for them in ways that I uniquely can as the CEO.
Yeah, that's really good. As you continue to evolve as a company, obviously culture is important. You get the right people on board, you're going in the right direction, you're aligned. What's the kind of culture you're building at Share Mobility?
Well, we're trying to build a really mission-driven culture of people that care about what we do as much as how we do it. I think you'll find that our team is equally interested in the impact we're making on the people we serve as much as the technology that we're building. We're not building another Snapchat. We're building something that we think has a meaningful impact on people's lives. And so been really lucky to be able to curate a team of people that have that same shared passion. We also have a lot of people who are excited about mobility and where this industry is going, and the potential it has to change the way we live. And so I think we're all really excited to get up every day and get to work on transportation because of how important it is in everybody's lives, but also because it's got so many problems in it. It's almost been taken for granted that it is the way it is. And we really believe that we can change the way it is for the betterment of frontline workers.
The industry you're in is automotive, but really transportation, but it's really people. I mean, you're helping people at the end of the day and their experience and how they go about their day and their work. But you personally, what's your level of interest around automotives and just cars in general? Are you passionate about that space as well, just on a personal side note, in addition to solving this transportation problem?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like an anti-car guy at all. I like cars. I always have. I've been really into it. I think I wanted to be a part of the automotive industry, and I wanted to find a way that I felt like I was being additive and not trying to disrupt. Like the automotive industry is it's on its own path and it's going to do what it's going to do. I can look at it and say, there's a bunch of people that it's not serving at all. And let me go and bring them in to it and get to be a part of it. So like I love racing and like cars a lot. So I don't think of it as like, I don't want people to drive at all. I want people to be able to get transportation they can afford. And so I think about us, like you were saying, as an employee benefits company more than a transportation company. And that's how we want our customers to think about us, as an employee benefit. And when people get us from their employer, they perceive it different than like an open to the public ride sharing service. We have a higher level of trust. We're able to build a long-term relationship with them. And that's why we see riders using our service 35 to 40 times a month versus ride sharing, which is typically 4 to 5 rides a month. And that's just a completely different mode for a different use case. We're trying to be a more efficient, higher frequency for the people that really need it to go to work.
So, on the outside looking in, if you are a company that you know you want to provide a service like this for your employees and they use your platform, do they also need to go out and then align with a car service company that will do that for them? Do they have to go out and lease cars, have to buy cars? Like in your model, what's best case scenario? What's most efficient? What's most cost effective?
So if we come to an employer that already has an existing transportation service and they're just looking for the technology to have it operate better, we can support that use case. But for most of our customers, they're coming to us for a turnkey solution. And through our platform, they're using the software, but also getting the transportation services. And so we're providing for them vehicle driver insurance and total transportation management, so they don't have to get into that. They tell us when the employees need to arrive at work, when they need to arrive, and who the employees are, and our software takes care of the rest.
Wow. Sign me up. I love that. Take away all the problems that you don't have to think about: the insurances, the cars, the transportation vehicles, the management of the time and the process to get it up and running, all the expenses behind it. Yeah, to me, it sounds like such a fun conversation to have with companies. It doesn't sound like it takes a ton of selling to really present it, but I know there's an education aspect to it. What's on the roadmap as you look at 2024 from what you built today and kind of where you're going next with your platform?
Yeah. So I want to be working with our existing customers to get into more of their locations so that we can demonstrate how this works at a variety of different types of facilities. I also want to be bringing new organizations. I'm really excited about some new industries like the building industry or the restaurant industry. These are some customer segments that we historically haven't had a lot of work in, but are starting to come to us with some use cases that are really, really compelling. So I'm excited about some of those segments. But overall, it's a lot of the same thing. Just trying to double down on what's working. Manage the economy as it's a little slow and people are a little uncertain, and just focus on the parts of the economy that are really growing, right? We are seeing resurgence in automotive. We are seeing a huge need in US-based food production, and the chip and semiconductor industry is starting to see a lot of new facilities and new suppliers. And so overall, just really excited about the resurgence of manufacturing in the United States, and trying to work with governments to kind of connect this transportation problem with economic development, because I think the government's got some money that could help accelerate this.
No doubt. AI has been so prevalent in the news recently over the last 6-12 months. How does AI play into your platform? Is it currently embedded in it? Is it on the roadmap of somehow making it more efficient?
We're not an AI first company, so I think any kind of marketing around AI ends up being a little gimmicky and gets a kind of eye rolls. What I'm seeing work, what us founders are talking about is use AI, don't talk about it. And that's kind of what we're doing. We've got it embedded into a lot of departments. We're using it in a lot of ways internally, and we're figuring out how do we want to like put AI in front of our customers I ultimately see AI as being one of those things that's going to work in the background to make our product work better, but we're not going to talk about it a whole lot. It's just going to work. And hopefully that helps with adoption more than some of these kind of emerging things like blockchain, where some of the statements were a little forward looking and it didn't really come to fruition. We don't want to do that. Long-term AI is very much going to drive the commute decisions of the workforce. And we have an enormous data set around where people live, how they commute. And if it's about training a data set, I think we're in a really good position to be a first mover in AI. We probably won't talk about it too much.
Yeah, I agree with that. And we're kind of hearing that same sort of position from a lot of other companies too. You're on an amazing journey. Is there any questions I haven't asked that you think are worth sharing at this point?
No, I mean, you asked really good questions on this. Maybe one of those is just kind of closing the loop back around the talent search, right? And I think that one of the things that we're seeing that's unique is geolocation-based talent sourcing and being very, very specific around where you're going to get a workforce down to kind of the census block level. And how companies are going to be able to start unlocking this HR data is going to become very, very, very interesting.
Amazing. I'm so curious to see how things go for you in the future and your company. It'd be great to do a follow-up with you as you go. You're on an amazing journey, and I just can't wait to kind of see where things go. As we wrap up here, Ryan, I want to give you a big shout out for taking your time. I know you didn't get a ton of sleep last night. You had a lot of fun with, like we all do, when we can get out once in a while and go to a concert and do some fun stuff. So appreciate you making it to the show and really telling a great story. If someone wants to find you or find your company, where do they go?
Great. I appreciate those kind words. And this was great to get to talk to you about this. Thanks for your interest. Sharemobility.com. It's the best place to go. Pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. But, we would love to talk to companies that are just curious about this, whether they're ready to act today or they just want to learn for something in the future. But for growing companies or companies that want to take care of their people, we think transportation is going to be a really big benefit in the future.
Great. Well, Ryan, thanks for joining. I appreciate it. And to all the listeners listening, it means the world to me that you've taken your time to spend with us today. I'm Jake Aaron Villarreal, signing off for now, but can't wait to connect with you all again on the next episode. Until then, take care. Before we wrap up, I want to give a big shout out to all the entrepreneurs that have joined to make this podcast possible. And for all the listeners for listening, it means the world to me that you chose to spend your time with us today. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, signing off for now, but can't wait to connect with you all soon on the next episode. Take care. This show is sponsored by Match Relevant, a company that helps venture-backed startups find the best people in the market, and they do it in 3 simple steps. First, they sit down with founders to understand their story. Second, they tell their story into multiple candidate channels. And third, they schedule interviews within 48 hours. Find us at matchrelevant.com to learn more about how we do it.